Welcome, everyone. We have another edition of our MAT Practitioner Spotlight. And today I have the honor of talking with Ed Morand. And Ed's been a practitioner. He's been a specialist. He got certified in 2007. Then he got master level at 2014. And he's come all the way through the RX process. Also finished that in 2018. And we are just talking about it. And most recently, he's even advanced through the RX electric stim program that we have kind of tied in that really haven't even talked about in any of our podcast. But it's the highest level of education. So Ed's been doing a great job with MAT, and I know he's had a lot of success with the clients. I know personally clients that I've talked with that are friends of mine that have worked with him. My niece works with him, and so it's a small world. He's on the other side of the country, and but it's great to be able to have the referrals like that. And kind of that was one of the goals with MAT, is being able to no matter where you are in the country, to know that you can get quality service, and that's what Ed has been able to provide. So Ed, thanks for being here today. Appreciate you doing that.
Thanks for the opportunity, Greg, and thanks for those referrals. It's been a pleasure to work with these people.
Great. So real quick, why don't we go back, or let's look at 2007 and kind of where you were at, and your background and what got you into MAT, and kind of the steps you took. Way back. That's almost 15 years, about 15 years ago. That's a big time span for all of us. We're all getting older.
Yeah, it was actually 2006. I did my internship. The path was that I was an unathletic child. I was not very physical. I think stickball or wiffle ball was all I did till age 12. And then my dad said something about a 12-year-old has the greatest endurance of any human. And I began running. And it was kind of like coming out of the running boom. We started together, and then I was on a track team in school, and I was that character that if you told me I couldn't do it, I was going to do it. So I became a runner 100 miles a week by the time I was 15. And you can imagine what we know today is that the more strain and stress you put on the body, the sooner you start to see things. Soon after, like, my knee tightened up, and I always found it really hard, to handle the stretch culture that we get in track and field. And I was also a singer, and I was also doing school shows, musicals. And someone said, he can't dance, we're going to need a couple hours. And then I became, like a closet training as a dancer. I was like running off, hiding to take ballet classes. And by the time I got to college, in one class in ballet, you're stretching. And then I was on the track team in college and at Catholic U in Washington, D.C. And it was like diving into the big leagues. And that's not even a big competitive school. So I was stretching on one hand, and then coming back to track practice, I'd get slower. And I was kind of scratching my head as to what I was going to do about that. And I left that program, became much more of a dancer, went to Harlem, got a professional dance education with a stop along the way at a different college where I was getting a lot of chances to perform. One thing that happened was that I fell repeatedly playing the scarecrow in college, and the stage was raked, so it's on an angle. I'd fall down, I'd get up. And I noticed my jumping and turning as a performer wasn't the same when I get up from those falls. And so between, some tightening of the knee, losing my last season in high school due to a knee injury, this experience in college, as a dancer, it never really showed up that there was something wrong until I did a tour of Europe, came back with 5 different injuries, and PT kind of making the rounds that we all experience, PT, orthopedic, acupuncture, massage, chiropractic. I tell people I saw 5 of every kind of practitioner, and I didn't really get better. No one was really speaking one story, telling one truth that was sustainable, reproducible, reliable. It was always kind of like trial and error and guesswork. And I had done RTS work as a lecturing trainer. I was teaching based off those principles for a New York Sports Clubs organization. And in that way, I'd come to know Tom. I was like a Boy Scout following Tom around the country to different lectures, Tom Purvis, that is, and studying biomechanics. And many of Tom's acolytes and lecturers for his program were doing MAT, were MAT practitioners. And so I was saying, no, I can't do that. It's too expensive, too time consuming. The internship at that time was, about a year long, coming out once a month for a 3 or 4 day weekend. And, from where we were coming from, it was costly, it was time consuming, there was travel, there was overnight stays involved. And I said, I'll never be able to do that. And when, as an individual, I went for the same reasons that I went to a practitioner, I was, at that time, all those 5 injuries, 3 of them had gone away. I still had really bad hip and lower back. I had challenged a girlfriend, I'll race you to that stop sign, and she beat me. And that was like such an uncomfortable experience. So I finally scheduled with a practitioner. I was dragging, I couldn't hip flex, I couldn't hip extend on that side. I was dragging one leg up the stairs to that appointment. And when I got on the table, that was probably 2004, 2005, my whole world opened up. This guy knew everything almost encyclopedically about the muscle anatomy, what muscles and joints did. I had a lot of, I'll be honest, I had a lot of professional envy. I just wanted to know what he knew. I couldn't understand how he knew it. He threw your name around all the time. And I was like, who is this guy? I got to work with this guy. I got to study this material. I came out of that session. It was a pretty long session. And I could not lift my knee. I was in my early mid-30s and I couldn't lift my knee. I could not stand on a step and raise up to the next level. And I came out of that session kind of good as new. And I think I did 2 more sessions before I signed up to do the internship in 2006. And that's how I came. So I'm not just a satisfied practitioner, but I'm also a satisfied customer. So
that's the neat part about it. Most people that got into MAT or have gotten into MAT is because they had the personal experience. And like you said, you went down all these different paths with conventional therapy and all the different modalities and still having problems. And it's the neat part about it. And the results were pretty immediate. It doesn't mean that you're fixed. I always tell people careful using that word fixed, because I mean, it takes a long time to get to where you were at that point, years of stress and overuse. But then it kind of showed you that it was a muscular issue. And if you address the neuromuscular issues, I mean, the tightness and pain can go away. And it sounds like that was your first experience, and kind of, again, a complete opposite thought process to probably everything you'd been doing up to that point.
Yeah, hugely. The funny thing about connecting now, we all use, isometrics in our work and muscle testing, but there were a couple little tidbits that finally got clarified when I came through the internship. For example, there was an experience where a teacher just repeatedly had me jumping, essentially a plyos. And he gave me extra reps than the rest of the class. And I was pissed. I was like, why is he, now we would say he's taking an interest in me. He was trying to develop me. But at the time, I was very upset. And I think I even confronted him. Like, why isn't anybody else getting these? And it went back to this whole stretch culture. So we all get indoctrinated with stretching. Well, with MAT, we work to activate the muscle, and then flexibility naturally opens up in responsible ways, right? Not in ridiculous ways. But I noticed I would lose my speed and lose my jump when I would stretch. And when we do this work, the jump and the speed come back. And it's just extraordinary. The body works like a well-oiled machine in a lot of ways.
That's the crazy part, that intrinsically you were recognizing that when you were going and doing the stretching, you'd come to perform and you weren't as explosive. And literally that's that fire and that timing. And it's pretty crazy. And the idea that actually what we think is has a positive impact for improving range of motion or flexibility actually impedes performance rather than enhances performance when you do various forms of stretching. And it's ironic. One of the things I talk about all the time, I mean, the stretching, the idea is we need to increase mobility, but without stability, mobility doesn't matter. And I've seen people with great ranges of motion, and again, you were increasing your range of motion, but your performance levels were decreasing. And ACSM came out with a position paper in, I think, 2011 that basically compiled all the research out there on passive stretching, and basically came up with three conclusions out of all the research that they compiled. Three main conclusions is it does nothing to create long-term changes in flexibility. It does nothing to get rid of muscle soreness, and it can decrease the force output of the muscles for up to an hour. And that's what you were experiencing. You were going right from stretching into performance, and your force output were decreased. And I always say to clients, like, why would you want to be weaker when you're trying to perform? And that's the ironic part is the research is out there, but it's still part of the mainstream that we need to be flexible. And in order to do that, there's so many modalities focused on trying to forcefully increase range of motion, where with muscle activation techniques, we're saying you get these muscles activated, i.e. tighten battery cables, improve the communication between the nervous system and the muscle system. It's like melting the ice. All the protective tightness goes away.
Mhm. Yeah, I go a step further, because I have a big fuse box here in this practice location. And I say, I'm going to go through, especially with a specialist level of this work. I'm going to go through and check a bunch of these muscles. It's kind of like flipping the fuses in the fuse box.
Mhm.
And sometimes we actually have the blessing that you flipped a few of the right ones, and many of them come back kind of like a string of lights.
Right. Yeah.
And that's my follow-up to the back.
Yeah.
I want credit for that.
All right. You're the fuse box switcher. Yeah. And like I say it all the time. I mean, every muscle in the body has its own set of battery cables, its own communication pathways with the central nervous system. And all we want to do is make sure that it's all intact.
Yeah.
And so that's a great story. And I don't know if I ever thoroughly understood your background that way. I knew your history to a degree, but didn't know what led you into MAT and the impact it had. And then that's 2007. I mean, the early years, and then you moved into master level, and then one of the early people in the RX process. Can you explain that evolution and how you went from range of motion leading to, or limitations in range of motion leading to identifying isolated muscle weaknesses, and then increasing mobility through stability, and really straightforward biomechanical process to this, what I call a neuromuscular overhaul with the RX process? And can you kind of explain your growth with that?
Yeah, when we were working at the specialist level, we'd often find ourselves repeating stuff, which would be fine. My experience was so wonderful, and so many people would have similar experiences where they would come back with some degree of frequency. But once we got into the RX process, we came to understand that there were these central motions that if we applied the MAT process with its proprietary protocols and checks and rechecks, we're able to come up with central motions that contribute to everything a person does, whether it's just daily life, which is a sport for some people. In many cases, we see golfers and cyclists, and those are my two biggies. I don't know about you. And obviously retired football players, active football players. But another one, the golf community does all of this rotation. And so what we see is that if you get these core emotions and apply them to just daily living, functional life, you get them to rotate better. You get them to bend better, to touch their toes better. You get them to lift the legs up. That was my issue. I couldn't lift my knee, climb the stairs. You get them to move their hips and pelvis in as a symmetrical way as they walk down the street. For an athlete, that's running, right? For an average person, that's also life-saving. That gets you out of the way of the moving vehicle, if something's coming at you. Of course, we know many of the back muscles are greatly involved in stabilizing all of this work. I'm kind of fascinated by that because we do work on these central motions, and we see crossover that very early on, clearing up and strengthening those motions, the person can live a happier, less painful life. Tightness goes away, almost dissolves. And as you said earlier, there are sometimes setbacks. We sometimes see the person's lifestyle walking it back, and we have a communication with them about what else is stressing them, the overuse, the emotional stress in their lives, their capacity to rest and recover. But I'm particularly fascinated. I know you are, Gray. I'm particularly fascinated with the way that everyday life is a sport. And we can get them from a symptomatic buy-in, because life can be painful and tight, up to a performance buy-in where, okay, they can go to the gym and start to recover their youth. But then for athletic people and many of the people I see, they're like in their midlife and they want to perform at their sport. The golf, skiing, tennis players are, and cyclists are particularly bought in, so they'll do anything. These bikes cost, tens of thousands of dollars in a lot of cases. And it's so extraordinary way, there's that continuum between getting better at just life, out of your injury state, into your fitness health state, and then all the way out there into your performance state of wellness.
And that's neat, because one of the things I always say is, literally, life's going to beat us up. And somebody's got, from a neuromuscular standpoint, someone has to be there to put you back together. And all the aches and pains that we relate to aging have to do with failure of the muscle system to be able to tolerate forces. And the first sign of this neuromuscular dysfunction is protective tightening. The second sign is pain. And so many people complain, and I can't do the things I used to be able to do, or people work their whole lives and then they finally retire and they're in too much pain to be able to do the things they enjoy, like you said, with golfing and riding bikes and things like that. And literally you can, if as long as the communication pathways are still there, you can, really reinforce it and basically tighten the battery cables, improve that communication. And then you start seeing people do things they couldn't do. And since they were 25 years old. And that's really, you just said it perfectly. You want to give them their life back. And instead of this downward spiral that we relate to aging, the whole goal of MAT is stop this downward progression and start getting them back toward a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what you're seeing with your clients. And
yeah, one of the things that, I was playing with that idea to try to get it across as quickly as possible. And I've said, I think I bought the domain to one of these things, like move like you're 15. And that means like, you don't have to think about, you see your friend cross the field, you run over, when you're 45 or 50, you're like, is my knee going to make it? Is my back going to make it?
Yeah,
You got to think about it,
Yeah.
So what you're talking about is right in the center of the bullseye, in my opinion, because this is access to the fountain of youth, which is denied most people. Mm-hmm. Right? It's almost like a private party with a velvet rope, and you got to know the bouncer, and you got to have somebody pretty at your side, dressed up to the nines, and then maybe you'll get in. Well, exercise is promised on the internet and in commercials, etc., as a fountain of youth, but so many people cannot do it, and we help them to be able to do it. So we get them to the private party.
Yeah, that's a huge point. Exercise is deemed the cure-all for everything from coronary heart disease, diabetes, Parkinson's, MS. You exercise and you'll get healthy. But if exercise is a stress and exercise is it's force on the body. And if the body can't tolerate forces, it continues to literally shut down and negative things happen. And it can actually put the body in a catabolic state rather than an anabolic state, and people can't heal. And that's when they have all these aches and pains and the degenerative joint disease and everything. And so literally MAT is the precursor to exercise. All of those things can happen with exercise if the body can tolerate the forces. So if you can get the muscles, stronger and more active to be able to tolerate forces, so then people can exercise and get the benefits out of exercise, then all of a sudden you're healing, and symptoms far away from muscle function seem to change. I've seen digestive issues change. Food allergies, food sensitivity. Basically you're reducing levels of inflammation in the body as you raise tolerance levels of the muscles. And you get them out of that acute state or chronic state of inflammation into the growth and repair state of inflammation. And the end result of that is healing and health. And so literally, you said it perfectly. MAT can be the precursor to exercise, which allows exercise to provide all those health benefits that we've talked about and discussed with exercise for years.
Yeah. One of the things I didn't even explain about my background, I had a brand and a fitness facility in Manhattan that was Pilates and fitness. And so many people would come in, and we found ourselves avoiding things. Right. The PT, the doctor said, avoid this body part. And there was a general understanding. It's still something out there that the Pilates would fix these imbalances. And what I saw year after year after year was I was just hands off, just not even going near things. This has given us this wonderful opportunity to go at the imbalance, at this root cause, right? This underlying reason for the imbalance. And I want to sort of shout out some of my clients. I have a couple of cyclists that are in their early and late 60s. One that's a retired pro who's just about 50, 51. But these guys are reporting to me, their rides are 2-3 hours long when they're in their wheelhouse. And I don't know if you've ever cycled, and I do this as an enthusiast. If your hips slip off the pedals or the chain breaks, that's a jarring experience for your, we know which pattern is probably out. But these guys, when I work with them, they're reporting to me the best rides of their lives, in their 50s and 60s. I personally, as a practitioner, couldn't have worked with them and done this volume. You know, I'm kind of doing 24 hours a week. I don't really want to do many more hours in a week. My body, Greg, one of the secrets here is that we work really hard, right? We're circling a treatment table all day long.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And we're accumulating or counting steps. I mean, they're way up there, and we've got to save energy for our own exercise. Well, this is new for me because I'm getting this work and I'm doing that number of sessions in a week. And I've got some big clients, as we said in the pre-show.
Right.
I'm in the gym hitting personal bests from my 20s and 30s that I haven't gone near. My presses, my pulls, my lat pulls are in a much higher category. I would say I'm I don't know, 30%, 40% higher than I'd ever been. I was afraid to go near those poundages.
Yeah, because it break you down.
Break it down. And now, we need our colleagues. So our community is really important too. We as practitioners all need to get worked on. Our work is really tough on the body, but I'm going to the gym just like our star clients, breaking myself down, coming back. And what's really cool is that my clients that are taller or heavier, they feel light in my, in my.
And that's funny because that's what I always say is I don't care if anyone else gets this about MAT, as long as I have someone to take care of me the rest of my life and I'm healthy. Because literally, and you've experienced this, is especially when you have a foundation where you're getting treated regularly. If anything goes awry, oh, my neck's tight or I tweaked my shoulder or something like that, I know I'm a treatment away from feeling better. And it's like, because you have a solid foundation neuromuscularly. So it isn't this chronic pain that people experience. I mean, I'm 59 right now, and I look at, what, at 60, I'm going to be better than 59. And at 65, I plan on being better than 60. And that's not the norm. I mean, again, we expect this downward spiral to come with aging, and it doesn't have to. And I literally say, from a neuromuscular standpoint, I mean, if there's not a better anti-aging program out there, because if your muscles can't tolerate forces, negative things happen that put you in chronic states of inflammation, and inflammation is a common denominator behind every disease out there. And so if you can reduce inflammation through the body by raising tolerance levels of the muscles, what better anti-aging program is there?
Yeah. I mean, MAT, especially MATRx with STEM, it gives you wings, to quote another popular ad campaign. But on the training continuum, we're all, most of the community is trainers of some sort, right? The educators, physical movement work. And this, I don't have time really, aside from consulting about fitness choices and training, but the work actually changes the whole discussion, the whole dialogue. And we want to interact with our clients, trainers, and in many cases, this resets, just raises the bar as to our decision-making with them about what's good for them. They learn as to the choices they make in the gym, or they have to have a conversation with their trainers, coaches about what will work and will take them forward. And I think that's also a huge element that we can't leave out, because it's almost on the table, and I'm not sure if you explain this way, but I often tell people this is micro training. Think about the presses and the pulls. They're macro training, and your trainers and coaches are experts in that area, but this is micro training. And in these intrinsic muscles, our first 5 patterns, most of those muscles are not on the anatomy charts, right? They're not famous muscles. You've done a great job, and I'm grateful to you and the community and the organization over there at headquarters for educating us on all of these intrinsic almost invisible muscles to the greater fitness community or community of professionals overall. They just don't speak our language. This is an incredibly detailed undertaking. And you start to realize where it's really important. You start to realize, I'm going to get a better bench press from having a stronger transverse abdominis.
Yeah.
You know, how is that possible? Because you're usually on a bench or using cables in the air, and you've got to stabilize your rotation.
And everything anchors off a stable core, all the upper body muscles, lower body muscle, everything anchors. And that's a huge point. As I always say, the integrated system is only as good as the function of its isolated parts. And we are only as strong as our weakest link. So if we have all these weak links throughout our body, how can we generate force? I mean, people talk about this myofascial system and everything being integrated. Is like, if you got weak links in this chain, you're not going to be very stable, and you're not going to be able to produce a lot of force.
Yeah. You know, I had somebody ask me a couple of weeks ago, you know, I'm on the bike, you know, I'm just holding still. I said, you don't realize how hard you're working just to hold still, right? You're eccentrically or isometrically controlling motion. And that's actually the most expensive motion when you're on the bike, trying to keep this thing still and then everything else moving like an engine underneath.
Exactly.
It's extraordinary. Yeah.
Well, Ed, that's great. I mean, so time goes, we could talk for days. Time flies, we got schedules. So great talking with you, great getting the information. I think one final thing is, I mean, if you had something, a recommendation of people that are interested and maybe thinking about why would I pursue MAT as a career or a learning opportunity? I mean, do you have any word of advice for people considering to learn MAT?
You know, I meet plenty of fitness professionals that they're not interested in anything, you know, rehabilitative or bodywork oriented, but that small, extremely obsessed, highly interested subset segment is almost like, you know, a straight up vertical. Remember my experience as a lecturing fitness professional with a lot of pre and post rehab experience, people coming to me with injuries, and I threw my hands up in the air. There was nothing more I could do. So anyone who has that kind of obsessive OCD interest, all of the answers lay out in this process. And for that individual, this is like the rainbow, you know, the pot of gold, rainbow. You find what you were looking for.
Yeah, that's perfect. And you know, it's funny because when I first started speaking nationally, and I mean, told if you're teaching the exercise professionals, you can't talk about injuries because it's out of the scope of what they do. And I'd sit in classes and say, how many people have clients that have pain? They'd all raise their hand. How many people have pain? They'd all raise their hand. And it's like, then something's wrong with this industry. And as a health and fitness, even rehab industry, if we don't understand the muscle system's role in chronic pain and injury, then how do we know when we put a force on somebody's body, whether it's having a positive effect or a negative effect? And how do we know we're not contributing to that downward spiral? And I think that's through the tools that we have of MAT through assessment. And I mean, we're able to determine whether when we put force on somebody's body, whether it had a positive or a negative effect. And you can take things away that they're doing that are pushing them down the downward spiral. And you can give them, I mean, corrective processes that can help, prevent them from going down the downward spiral. So you have, again, it's a precursor to exercise. And so as exercise specialists, health and rehab, we got to understand, or we have to understand the muscle system's role in chronic pain and injury if we're trying to help people, perform.
Yeah. Remember, I was also a pre and post rehab, I thought an expert at that time. This is really the essence of prepping a person for a clinical experience, prepping them into and out of. There we go.
Yeah, perfect. Great. Well, Ed, thank you very much. That's a great talk. Great talking with you. Appreciate everything you're doing.
Great seeing you again, Greg. And I appreciate you and all the work that you guys have done to promote this work and get us involved.
Cool. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that time goes quick. So we're off now, but good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Good.
Thank you. Yeah. I had notes. I was trying to look at them, but then
Yeah, that's the nice part. It's just a conversation. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
even prepare for these. I just say, just start talking and see where it goes. But
Yeah.
I love the history and the background and your perspective of what it's done. And like you said, you were in the exercise and rehab as a specialist teaching on it, and it opened up a whole new world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we got a 10 coming in, or I have a 10 coming. So sorry to cut you off, but good to
No,
see you.
no.
Thank you. Tell
It's
Chris
great.
I said hello.
I will. I will. All right. Thanks a lot,
All
bro.
right, thank you.
Take it.